I feel slightly fraudulent on two counts in this discussion. The first is that our researcher in Coventry, Alternative Employment Research, Paul Quigley, who's been very involved in organising this meeting, he should be doing the presentation really, but and sadly he's away, he's off sick, can't be with us today. Secondly, talking about arms conversion, the Coventry Alternative Employment Research probably never really got to specifics of an alternative plan and a site-by-site technological transfer discussion. Our project was very much a macroeconomic look, and I think a lot of what I would say is similar to what Hilary has to say, that Paul looked systematically by industry in Coventry at what was being made, what was reliant on Defence, Ministry of Defence contracts, and we over the first couple of years of the project, he compiled profiles of General Electric, Marconi, Dunlop, Rolls-Royce, and produced in our first report in 1988, Tanks and Turbines, a review that was very much about the vulnerability of those jobs. 26,000 we calculated, and even courtholds, huge number of military contracts. Was it for uniforms? What was it precisely for? We didn't actually do a study on their site, but we did turn up in the Ministry of Defence contract list that courtholds was also involved in military contracts. I should say about the CARE project, it came out of some work I was doing for the then medical campaign against nuclear weapons, on Trident or Health, and sadly and ironically we find ourselves campaigning exactly the same all these years later. We, in a very accidental meeting with John Rowley, he started persuading me about Lucas, and we proposed with Coventry Trades Council to fund a project looking at the military industry in Coventry. We were grant funded by Barrow and Geraldine Cadbury, and we lasted 10 years, and it was this political emphasis that was very successful, I think, about what we did. We were able to feed parliamentary questions of a calibre that ministers didn't expect. We wrote a briefing on Matrix Churchill and the Iraq War issue, and whatever kind of an example of arms conversion was that, oil pipes or gun barrels. It's not a technological problem, it's a problem of political will, it's a problem of what we want made, what the policy, as Hilary says, is that the things that need to be made for societal or environmental benefit. By 1991, when our fuller report, A Future Out of Work, came along, the idea of a peace dividend was mainstream in the political sense. It was there were funded schemes through European Union councils that had been totally uninterested in it, suddenly appointed officers in their economic development units to do it, and we might have demised a lot sooner perhaps, given that new political climate. But actually they came to us for information, and so that it was some time later that our project came to an end. In my professional life as a then Director of Public Health in Sandwell in the West Midlands, we actually took these notions of converting military industry and we applied them in health settings. We did a study on alternative uses for tobacco industry and tobacco retail. We did In Search of the Low-Fat Pork Scratching, looking at how we might get a healthier food industry in Sandwell. And we did Good Health about the alcohol trade. And again, a lot of the things that we came to were things that you might see in your average Witherspoons today. The sort of more sort of food and leisure offer, as well as just the spit and sawdust. And we came to call that the health dividend. Indeed, during the AIDS epidemic, an American company that made body bags for the Vietnam War started producing condoms. You know, these are not technologically challenging problems. They're actually problems about social necessity. Finally, in relation to that kind of work, and I think it is important that this meeting, there was stuff on the website that, you know, is it a nostalgia trip? Well, for me, certainly it isn't, and it is about what we do next. We had in Sandwell, in the Health Action Zone, a project called AHEAD, which was an agency for health and economic development, and we supported social businesses. We had a design for disability element, which became Medilink, in which local West Midlands companies were supported to develop health and social care related products. And that subsequently we did the Eye House in West Bromwich, which was a Victorian house stacked full of aids and adaptations for people with disabilities, which were actually better for everybody. So we then coined the idea of the inclusion dividend, that actually, if you design things properly, they work for everybody. There is actually, I think, looking to the future, there is an opportunity in health service. Finally, there is a thing called NHS Innovation. Finally, they are protecting intellectual property of what people come up with, and trying to develop that through industry. And so that sort of pedigree of the health products in the Lucas plan, taken through some of the work that we've done in Medilink, I think has got a clear family tree, I think. In relation to some other work that I do with the Faculty of Public Health, in a few weeks' time we're launching our policy on violence prevention and public health, and we do refer to converting the military industry for peaceful purposes, and actually the issues of control of violence, actually the same things that apply if you're trying to control knives in schools, guns in the streets, or violence between nations. They all require some very similar interventions. They require trust, they require confidence building, and they require alternatives to violent resolution of problems. So I think that's an important thing for us to remember in a wider context. And finally, in the faculty's election manifesto that we produced to go with the 2014 election, we called for a carbon-free economy. And again, as Hilary has said about Barrow, the potential for that site to be used for wave power, wind power, tidal power are enormous. The revised Oceans of Work report that Steve Schofield produced in 2007 suggested a whole different future in renewable energy for this country. And I think, you know, in the context of Brexit, we have to start reclaiming some of the language of the levers. You know, can Britain power itself? Well, I think so, and I think, you know, politicians have to start thinking where they want to invest their industrial strategy for a future without fossil fuel. Can we feed ourselves? the whole nature of our agricultural policies in the wrong direction, could be fairer and healthier and better for the environment. And can we house ourselves? You know, the whole incompetence and short-sightedness of housing policy that can't house everybody that we have and can't do it in a lifelong fashion. All these are technological innovations that are there, which we should be diverting our industry towards. So I'm sorry I didn't describe any little tools of arms conversion, but I think it is a political decision, and it's something that we have to build from the grassroots. Thank you.